Muted.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Thomas. I work with Teachers Curriculum Institute. I've been with TCI for 12 years. Prior to that, I also taught for 12 years social studies just south of Columbus, north of Cincinnati, kind of in there in between. I taught at a suburban school district where I taught 7th and 8th grade social studies and used History Live in my classes before I came to TCI. So like I said, I've been with TCI for 12 years. I wear a lot of hats at TCI, so have my hand not only in sales, but also try to do some professional development, and I'm somewhat of a tech nerd, so I like to get my hands dirty with technology integration and keep my ear to the ground about what's our great field in terms of education. I'm really excited tonight to be able to go through some of the basics in our TCI subscriptions, and we kind of broke this down college course. A TCI 101 and a TCI 201. So tonight in the 101, really want to focus on getting started teaching. So we'll look at the table of contents, we'll look at lesson planning, materials, assessments, and even if I have a little time, tease you a little bit with how you can also modify some of that content for kids that have different needs in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to be sharing the screen. We're going to be live in my subscription, and we'll be looking at both social studies and science, because TCI, if you're not, we have a K-12 studies program, but we also now have K-5 science, and very soon we'll also have 6-8 to add to that within a year or so. So with that, I'm going to go to our main website. If you've not created your account yet, and your school administrator say purchased you, or your district purchased a subscription for you and you've not set up your account, they're going to give you a little code. And so what's going to happen is this. You're going to go to TCI's website, it's real simple, teachtci.com, and up in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a button that says Teacher Sign In. Now, when you click that, what's going to happen is it's going to bring up a little pop-up window that looks like this right here. Now, if it's the first time that you've ever been to the site to create an account, you didn't have a pilot account or anything like that, what you're going to do is click Create Account, and you'll fill in some information, and one of the things that you'll need there is the access code. Now, it's possible that you might have created your account for you, and yet better still, some of you might have already had an account and you are resubscribing, and so you're here tonight just kind of at what's fresh and what's new with TCI. So you might already have an account, but if you did not, you'll need to go through those steps to be able to get into your permanent TCI account. And then it's just a matter of being able to go back here. So I would bookmark our website for lots of different reasons, but I would bookmark the website so that when you want to get into your subscription, that you would be able to go to Teacher Sign In, put in your username and password, and then you'll be logged in and good to go. Now, the subscription that I have loaded up, I've actually got two of them. I've got a social studies program, and I also have a science program. When you log in, you'll see a button that says Teach Now for as many programs as you guys have access to. So I've already clicked that orange button, and I'm now at the table of contents. I want to share some of the features of the table of contents, and especially for those of you who are resubscribing and you're back for a second year or third year, what's different about this is that the look and feel of the table of contents is totally different than the way we've had it before. I really like this. I think it's very teacher-friendly. All the information that you need to have as a teacher in terms of to teach that lesson is right here. And you can totally customize the amount of information that you want to be able to see. So a lot of teachers, especially if they're new to us, they want everything checked because they want to be able to see the description, the essential question, what kind of teaching strategy is involved, the class time devoted to it. They're teaching science, and they have one of our science programs. One of the things they'll be able to see is whether or not they're going to need a TCI kit, that lab kit resource. So all of the information could be the table of contents, and I would take a look at it. The description for each of the lessons is particularly compelling to me, because that really shows what kind of thought, what kind of creativity went into the development of these programs. And we start with the idea that we can engage all the students inside of our classes. And it's science and looking at NGSS, social studies, various standards that we have, we're going to build a lesson around great activity that you can do in class. The teaching time, the time limit that you see there listed, that is if you did the lesson. So if you did everything that's listed in the activity, not counting the reading, but if you did everything that's in the activity there, how long could a total lesson to take? So for a lot of teachers, they look at our program, they'll see the time there, and they don't think of a single day in class. They'll think roughly a week, week and a half, and it really depends on how much time you have available to you. Now, I'm showing an 8th grade or a middle school program here, and that was my life for 12 years. So in my classes, I had about 35 minutes of instructional time, so a lesson that takes 160 minutes plus whatever reading would go on in class, it's going to take me about a week, maybe a little bit more to be able to get through. So the time is great, and we'll even see a further of that when we get into the visual lesson guide here in just a few moments. So I would definitely encourage you, take some time to look through that lesson guide or through the table of contents there, see the different items, and like I said, if you want to toggle some of that information to kind of collapse it down, you can certainly do that so that only the description shows up if you'd like. So that is the table of contents. Now to get ready to teach a lesson, all you have to do is to pick a lesson that you want to focus in on and click the title. So I'm going to click on, let's say, Toward Independence in this lesson or in this program. And for the science one, let me come over here and I'm going to pick How Do Environments Change. So while both of those, what happens in the background is the presentation tool. Actually, let me pick like the European settlement lesson. That one's a good one. What's going to happen is it's going to load up a presentation that you can cycle through by clicking arrows. Now, so you've got some navigation right down here. You also have some navigation help over here so that you can get through slides much more quickly if you'd like. We can go full screen by clicking this button right here. There are a lot of people that like to have a sloppy copy to be able to make their own notations as they go through a lesson. And so if you wanted to, you can print out this visual lesson guide, and what's going to happen is it's going to look a little bit like PowerPoint when you print out slides, in that there'll be 2 or 3 slides on a page, as well as any teacher notes that are related to it. So you can certainly print those out too. Now, what is
Brian?
2 things? Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a quick question?
You sure?
Thank you. Hi, my name's Aurora. My high schoolers, we didn't actually get them the workbooks for their class. So would it be then a great idea, since you can print it, to do that for just their class? Because there's only 2 of them in that class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Materials, and we'll get to that actually here in just a few minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You'll be able to print out any of the student-related materials that you would need.
Okay, thank you so much.
Or anything like that. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So the presentation that we're looking at here for science, or if I click back over here to social studies, it's really 2 things. It is a planning guide for you. So it's going to have your procedures, and at the very beginning, it's going to be all about you in terms of a teacher. So we'll provide to you a little video clip in some of them, especially like the social studies one, to kind of set up the activities. In the science ones, if you're going to do an investigation, whether it's small group or whole group, we'll have a video that actually models the activity, the investigation that you can use with your students. So we'll have a little video clip at the beginning. We'll have an overview that really breaks down that time that we were looking at before. So this shows the whole lesson cycle for me as a teacher. So we begin a lesson with a preview, we end with a processing assignment, and investigating primary sources in science. Sometimes they'll go a little bit further to a science talk. So I'll see my entire lesson cycle, and then as I click forward, I can see links to materials that I need so that I can carry this lesson off. So this is what it looks like in social studies. In science, really the only difference is that for those of you who use our Bring Science Alive program, oops, I went too far, is that some of the lessons require kit materials. And so if that was the case, if I needed forceps or something like that, those would appear right up here where it says kit materials. Whether you teach science or social studies, all of them have the inclusion of what we call an interactive student notebook. And so you have a PDF, and this PDF, what it is it is a document that you give to the students at the beginning of a lesson, and they use that to be able to catalog their experiences through that lesson cycle. So when they're reading in their text, they're going to be using it to be able to take notes. When they're doing, if you're doing a science lesson, when you do an investigation with students, it's where they're going to be keeping their lab notes. So it follows the entire lesson cycle, and you have that available as a PDF. Now, a caveat to this is that some of you might be in a district where they purchased a consumable of the interactive student notebook. So this is already printed off for you. So that's also one other possibility. Another possibility is that some of you are in fully integrated one-to-one schools, and so every student has a subscription. If that's the case, this interactive student notebook, the materials of that are actually cooked right inside of the student subscription, and we'll take a look at that next week in the 201. But for our sake tonight, when you need to look at materials and you go inside there, anything that you need to print, we'll give you instructions for. You'll have the link for. You can save those to a local device if you'd like. If there's science, you can even make notations of how much you used or even create shopping lists from that. So when you're using that presentation tool and it gets to the materials, we've tried to think about all the different steps that you need as a teacher to get ready, and not just talking about the stuff that you need to teach the lesson, but is there any kind of consideration that you need to make in terms of the classroom setup, or are there some specific points that you need to be aware of before you get into it? So we've thought about that whole lesson cycle from a teacher's vantage, because those were the people that developed the program, or teachers. As we click forward, what we'll see are those procedures that I talked about. So a lesson guide, if you will. And as we go through, we'll see prompts that we would give to the students as well as images. Now, I said that this presentation actually has a dual purpose, and here it is not only is it for you to use as you plan a lesson, but if you've got the ability to project this presentation, then you would use it as a backdrop to facilitate the activity inside the class. So let me show you what that would look like from your perspective if I go full screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the very beginning of where the lesson procedures pick up here, and I would begin showing my students this image right here as I introduce the essential question. So how did Europeans explore and establish settlements in the Americas? And as I go forward, again, I'll see prompts that I give to the students, sometimes thumbnails of things that they would be looking at. This one came from the interactive student notebook. If there's images or links, we build them inside of the presentation itself. So sometimes you'll click a link that will take you to the student text so that you could project that. Or sometimes there might be drag and drop that you would use with the students. Sometimes we'll put in suggestions on how you would go over certain topics, like here where we're introducing vocabulary for the students on this slide here. We've built in some suggestions in terms of vocabulary. We have a reading toolkit that a teacher who has the U.S. through Industrialism program could access and use with their students when they get ready to do the vocabulary. So it's content plus is what I would. It's your lesson guide on steroids, because it's so much more than just static slides. You're going to see interactive drag and drop. Sometimes you'll see videos that you'll be using with the students, all kinds of things. And it's going to focus not just on certain parts of the lesson. It's going to cycle through, and if I escape out of the full screen mode and we go back to this slide view here, it's going to have every component of the lesson. So where we're doing activities, and this is a really great lesson here where the students have been reading a little bit about Christopher Columbus and other European explorers who came to the New World. And after the students have read and taken notes in their interactive student notebook, the teacher is going to turn some students into participants in a scene. So this really great primary source visual here in the background, we're going to call some students up, and they're going to act out from the perspective of the people that they're going to be portraying. So it's a great show what you know atmosphere, but it's all made possible because you have this really great dynamic presentation behind you. So the presentation tool serves two purposes. It's there to plan. It's also there to implement and to use as your backdrop as a classroom teacher. Before I move to look at a different set of resources, and we go a little bit deeper on the materials, are there any questions on that? If you want to, you should be able to unmute yourself to be able to do that. If not, I think I can unmute you all. Yeah, there we go. You like? Okay, I didn't hear any questions, so I'm going to continue on just a little bit. Again, when you're going through the presentation tool, about the third slide or fourth slide in each one of the lessons will show materials, but you can always access them just by clicking the link at the top that says materials too. So we've gathered together everything related to one particular lesson, and it's all going to be cataloged under that link materials, and then of course you can navigate to different lessons just by going to a drop-down list. So if I needed to go to the lesson on the Declaration of Independence here, I can do that. Or if I'm in my science program, again, I click on materials. If I wanted to see the lab materials for lessons, well, I need to find one that has lab kit materials. There we go. So lesson 5 there, unit 1 in the 3rd grade program, these are going to be the kit materials that I need. Now, one additional thing that I would point out for those of you that do teach the science, or anything that would be in our lab kits, our teacher kits, they're all going to be bagged together by make your life a little bit more simple. We're going to have everything all ready to go when you get ready to do these lessons. So again, the materials all going to be congregated around the lesson. We developed that lesson, and all the materials and all these other things that are used with it go right along with those great lessons that you can view in the presentation. So we've looked at the lesson presentation. Now we've looked at materials. I want to focus in on assessments and then differentiation before we close out our time tonight. Because when we think about assessments, some assessments take place during the lesson, right? You're going to be doing formative assessments. And then some assessments take place at the end. So the summative assessment at the end of the lesson. And we're going to give you options for both, and plenty of options to be able to assess students as you go through. I always like to joke with teachers, there's 3 types of kids in every lesson: the ones that get it, the ones that don't get it, and the ones that don't get that they don't get it. And the idea with formative assessment is I want to find out where my students are at a particular juncture in the lesson. So every now and then you might want to stop and have the students do something in their interactive student notebook. And you might want to be able to view that. From time to time, you're going to have students participate in an interactive tutorial. From time to time, they'll do a reading challenge. You might want to give them a participation grade. And these 4 things in formative assessment we're going to be looking at next week in the 201. What I want to do tonight in the 101 is focus more on the end. So let's look at the summative assessment options that you have and how can you up your own. So I just scroll a little bit further. So again, I got here by clicking assessments. Here's my drop down for the lesson. And then I'm going to come down underneath the formative assessments and I'll see summative assessment options down here. And I have several different things that I can do. One is at TCI, we created an assessment when we built the lesson. So we, like any good teacher, we start with the end in mind. And you can certainly print out and view our assessment in English or in Spanish. Most teachers, they want to be able to create their own, though. They might want to pull some questions that TCI has developed and some questions of their own, or may want to just edit the questions that they saw from TCI. So we're going to give you some options to be able to do that. First, if you look down here, there's 3 boxes. One is that I can create a printable assessment. So for those of you who are in a school or you're working with students that they can only use paper and pen, then that's where you would go to create your assessment. For those of you who are in a school where the students are using devices and subscriptions, you can give an online assessment. Now, creating the test is almost exactly the same, so I'm going to click on Create an Online Assessment, and I'll show you how easy it is. The only difference is what happens at the end. So we create a printable assessment or assessment, and then this third button right here is use a shared assessment. Some of you work in a school where they have to do common assessment within a particular grade. And so what you could potentially do as a teacher is you can create an online assessment, and you can actually share that with other teachers so that they could use that very same assessment. But again, it's really simple. We're going to do it. I'm going to model it for you right here on how easy it is to get started by creating a summative assessment. So I'm going to create an online test, and I'm going to begin by giving my test a name. So I taught in Lakota, which is just north of Cincinnati, about 22 miles, and I'm going to say Lakota is my name on my assessment, and I'm going to give it an underscore with 3 for third grade. Now, the reason I did that is if I decide that I want to share this assessment later on, the naming convention of my assessment becomes important, because it should be something that my colleagues would easily be able to find. We'll sort all the assessments by state, so you can view assessments that were made in New Jersey by a teacher, or say California. So for my colleagues, they would look for Ohio, they would see Lakota and go, oh, that's Brian's test right there, perfect, that's the one that we're going to be using for the common assessment. So right when you get to the naming portion there, think about how you might want to name that so that if you do share it, that your colleagues would be able to find it. Now, if naming convention doesn't matter to you, or you're just making this for yourself, don't sweat it and get lost in the weeds. Just call it something and come to this next screen here, because this is where you're going to add questions from TCI's question bank, or even have access to be able to add questions from other teachers who've written items out there. So to add questions, you just pick a category. So I'm going to click on TCI's question bank. I can see all of the items that TCI wrote when they made this assessment, and I can pick just a few of them, or I can even select all of them and say, yep, those are the ones that I want, and I'm going to add to my assessment. Now, I'm getting a pop-up message here. Now, I don't see that if I were to create this as a printable test, I wouldn't see this pop-up. It would take me to the next screen automatically. The reason I see that pop-up right here is it's telling me open-ended and drawing items have to be manually graded. When you give an online assessment, we'll do the hard work of creating the multiple choices for you. Those will be done automatically. So we'll cut that time down, but an open response item, you'll still need to go in and view, decide whether students get credit and how much credit they get. So that's what that pop-up is telling me. I'm going to click OK. I come to the screen where now those questions have been added to my assessment right here. And I can do several things. First, if I don't like the order of them, I could just pick up a question and drag it into the new location where I want it to be sequenced. Or I might come over here and say, you know what, I think that's a 3-point question, and this one's definitely a 5-point question. I can change the point values of the questions. I can also go in and I can edit the questions. So these are questions that TCI wrote, but even so, I can still go in here and say, well, I'm not real happy with the way that that's worded. I'm going to word it a different way because it would mirror my own instruction, and I might even upload an image to go along with it. So we're going to give you the ability to edit the questions that we have created, and then you'll also see over on the right over here, you can add your very own question. So you can create a multiple choice item, an open-ended text item, an open-ended drawing item that would challenge the students to actually use drawing tools on their device to be able to complete. If you've got kids on an IEP or a 504 and you have a multiple choice item, you might want to come in here and eliminate a couple of the plausible detractors and just make sure that you have one of the answers is correct, and then save your response, and now you can modify your assessment if need be. So creating an assessment is really simple, and then when you get ready to manage it, we're going to give you some tools to be able to do so. First, you're going to see this button right here where we can preview it. So what does it look like to a student who takes this online assessment? Click preview, and now this is what the test would look like to a student who's taking it on any type of device, Chromebook, iPad, maybe smartphone, whatever they have, on-off switch in a browser. This is what it would look like to them when they take it online. So if I'm happy with that, great, I'm ready to go ahead and assign it to my students. Or perhaps I want to share assessment. Like I said, we created a comp assessment and I wanted to share this with our teachers. Well, now's the time. I can go ahead and click share assessment. Or sometimes I might want to go ahead and even though I made this a online assessment, I still might want to print out a PDF copy of it just in case as a backup shoot. And then, of course, we have our answer key down there. So
Brian?
make an assessment. Yes, making an
I'm
assessment.
sorry. When you share your assessment, say, because I teach middle school and high schoolers, say I want to share my assessment with my other teacher who teaches like fourth grade, can she take what I've sent to her and kind of like gear it towards her age group? Or actually that wouldn't matter because we'd be in totally different lessons, huh? I'm sorry, never mind.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. You can definitely share across people that have the same program.
Gotcha, yeah.
Across different grade levels. Now,
yeah, okay, sorry. I answered my own question. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. What you could do is make a PDF copy of it and send it to your colleague so that they can at least see you know, what you're doing at your grade, and if they wanted to, they could certainly scale it down, you know, so that it would be appropriate to their grade level if that's what you wanted to do. So you could definitely do a PDF of that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So when you're done making your assessments, what I would encourage you to do is go ahead and either refresh the page or click on the assessments link again. And when we scroll down under summative assessment options, note what we see now under where it says create your own assessment. I still have those 3 green buttons there, but now that test that I've created is right there. So if I need to get back to it, let's say I start to make my assessment but I don't finish, I can come in here and I can edit that assessment. Or if I wanted to assign it, I didn't earlier, I created it, but I didn't assign it. Now I can click a button and it would take me to an assignment page where I can say, all right, I want it to go to this class and I want it to do on this particular day. So you have the ability of getting back to your assessments. And by the way, you don't have to just create one. You can create several different forms of the same assessment for your students. And then if you get to a point where you say, all right, I don't need that particular test anymore, pretty simple. You just delete it and say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that test. So we make creating a summative assessment a snap. And when you add that in to what the students do on their side and the activity that you are using that teacher presentation for, it's going to make magic take place inside your class. Now we've got a few minutes left, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about how you can differentiate for different learners inside your class. So I'm going to switch over to U.S. history because we were using science there for a while. When I was in my last year teaching, I had a 7th grade class that had 33 kids in there, and 12 or 13 of them were identified IEP. I had 504 students in there. I had ESL students, as well as some kids that qualified for a GT pull-out program that their families opted in. So they were first ring class, were gifted and talented. So I had a pretty broad spectrum of different learning needs that were there in the classroom. And thank God TCI had some solutions for me as I was going through. So what I would encourage you to do is when you're logged into your subscription, go at the very top and you're going to see a category that says core and core, both in the science and the social studies program. Underneath teacher resources, you're going to see some very helpful links. First of all, we're going to look at differentiating instruction. When you click on that link, it's going to provide you some ways in which you can differentiate the lesson for different learners inside your class. So if I have English language learners inside my class and I'm doing this lesson on the Declaration of Independence, here are some lesson-specific modifications that I can make. Or if I have kids who are reading or writing below grade level. On the other end of the spectrum, if I've got students who are gifted and talented, how can I challenge them a little bit further? So I'll have some suggestions. And to me, the beauty of it is that these are lesson specific. They're not some generic suggestion specifically to the lesson and the lesson activity that we do. So you'll find that, again, under the More category, under the section Differentiating Instruction. You'll find all of those differentiation models inside there. Now, close cousin to it, right underneath it, under that More category, is the section on Enhancing Learning. And that's where we're going to provide you things like literature recommendations, or really great websites that are out there that go right alongside of that lesson itself that you might be doing in the class. If there's a link to that website, you can click it, as well as we try to give you a description of what's there and how you might use it with your students. And in some cases, we'll give you some extension activities that you can do. For those of you who are familiar with Stanford's Reading Like a Historian project, that's what this last one is there, Reading Like a Historian, so a teacher can go a little bit deeper in the lesson if they'd like. And we try to make those specific to each one of the lessons that you see inside there. So whether it's social studies, or if I go over here and we look at science, you'll see that they're always tailored to the particular topic that we're focusing in on. So tonight we looked at how to get into the table of contents and kind of explore the views in table of contents. We picked a lesson and we went through the presentation, the visual lesson guide. We saw the beginning slides are all about us getting ready, and then we also saw the procedures that we could plan the lesson around, but also those very same procedures are worded in a way and they're made visually in a way that we can use them dynamically inside the classroom to facilitate the lesson. We looked at where the materials are that you could gather together, and then focused also on summative assessments. So with all of that, next week I'll be doing another webinar. We'll be recording that one as well. It's TCI 201, and we're going to be getting started with students. So we'll look at how you set up your classes, how you add students. Those are the basics. And then we'll also look at the student subscription features, such as the text, the notebook. We'll look at reading challenges and tutorials. And I think that you definitely want to see what the students can do with those online subscriptions. So I want to thank you for taking your time out with us tonight. If there's anything that we can do for you, please email us, info@teachtci.com. You can email us anytime. Call us at 800-497-6138 as well. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.